Hi everyone, it's Paula from Paula Quilting. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be working again with my rail fence blocks, which create themselves during other projects because I do use them to make starters and enders, or leaders and enders. So they kind of make themselves as I go. So I've got a big batch of made already, but I will walk you through the process for the beginners as well. And then I want to empty my tray with stripy fabrics, which, as you can see, I've got quite a lot. Some of those are bedding pieces, recycled bedding. Some of them are bigger pieces from the shirts. Men's shirts I use very often. So as you can see, I've got quite a lot of colors and different kind of textures and designs of those stripes. And I would like to use them in this project. For after project comments and suggestions, stay till the end of this video. So first of all, we will start from just the basic fence rail, and we need 3 strips. Each strip is 6.5 by 2.5 inch. So if you've got some left over from the jelly roll, that's a good place to use them up. I normally cut my scraps from shirts and other stuff to kind of certain sizes. One of them is strips, 2.5 inch strips. So if there's something shorter than about 7, I kind of trim them to 6.5. Chuck them in my box, and like I said, leaders and enders are coming from here, and they make themselves in between other projects. But what we need, like I said, 3 strips. This is one of those projects where everything goes, so I'm not kind of fussed about, you know, what colors I'm putting next to each other. I just want to have a little bit of contrast there. Other than that, you know, it's one of those no rhyme, no reason, but it works. And I like those the best because I don't have to think about what I'm putting next to each other. So for each of those blocks I would like to make, I need 2 fence rail blocks. Or I don't know why I always say fence rail where it's actually rail fence. So either way, which when we sew them together, they are going to be 6.5 by 6.5 inch square, or they should be if our seam allowance is right. Now if your seam allowance will not come up right, don't worry about it either, because we will lose it off, you know, unless it's really bad. But we can work with that one as well. So don't worry, just sew those 3 strips together, sew those strips 3 together, and then we will have a next step. Finished, I will give them a little bit of press. Direction of the seams irrelevant here, press them however the fabric leads you, and then we get to the next point. So mine blocks came out quite even, but if yours haven't, just center them on top of each other. So you can see one direction goes this way, the one on top goes other direction, and if they are not exactly the same size, just center them. If you're missing just a little bit, you will be able to lose it in your 1/4 inch allowance. Let me just turn it around. Actually this one is slightly different size here, so I'm just going to center it a little bit more, and then I'm good to go. I'm missing a little bit at the top, I'm missing a little bit at the bottom, but that's fine, it will all be within that 1/4 inch allowance. And I'm just going to stitch all around that block. Now whether you just pass through and then you turn around the block and then you go this way, or you want to pivot, up to you, either way will work. Okay, so this block is ready. It's good to give a press now as well, and depending what fabric you're working with, if yours is maybe as flimsy as mine because it is recycled fabric, you know, from the shirts, you may like to put a little bit of spray starch and iron it now before the next step. It will just add a little bit of sturdiness to the block, so it will be easier for you to work with. So in one of the previous tutorials when I was working with my fence rails, we're drawing a line, a diagonal, and then we're cutting them out on diagonal. Here I'm literally just going from side to side and cut across. And we've got our half square triangles here made out of those fence rail blocks, and again take them to the iron, open them up and press. So this is what it looks like at this stage. Now again, depend how good your stitching was, you may or may like not to square them up, but what we will definitely need to know is what the size of that block is. And if your sewing is not consistent like mine sometimes, you may like to square those blocks now, or you know, when you have all of the batch made, so you know that you will be at the same size. So as cut, they're coming out to, well, mine came around 4 1/4, but not everywhere. I can see they are not even. So I will square them up, but I'm going to square them up only on one side, and I will show you why. So you can see here that there's a very small triangle here when we cut them up, and I want to keep as much of this triangle here as possible. Maybe on this one will be better visible. So I want to keep all of the triangle here. So I will set myself to 4 inches on this corner. Now I don't have to be very precise here yet, so if I'm missing a slightly here or it's not so even here, I'm not worried about it either. So just go with the allowance you will allow yourself for, you know, to lose it in the 1/4 inch. You may like to pull the fabric a little bit if it helps, but where you want to be is keep as much as you can of that triangle. So I'm going to square it up all to 4 inches. So now that they are, I know that they are all 4 inches, I can do a second part of the block, which is take one of my scrappy fabric, choose whichever I like, and cut a stripe long 4 inches, and then subcut them to 4 by 4 inches square, so they will be matching my squared up pieces. So which color would I like to add to this one? Oh, I like this blue, so I will add this one to those blocks. Now I'm using the same squares from the same kind of initial block to add them in. However, you can mix and match them, you know, it's up to you. The options are there to be explored, but I just, for this occasion, I will use just the squares from the same block. So I will take this to the iron board now just to make it nice and flat, and I will bring back 4 squares 4 inches in the size. Okay, I've got my squares and I've got my fences. So important thing now is to set them up the same direction. Now again, if you do it differently, you will have a different look. By all means, try it out. I'm sure it will be awesome anyway. But for me, I want to set them up the same directions, which means I'm just, as a guidance for myself, I've put all of those small triangles to the one side. And then I'm using my stripes, and now again I'm putting them in the same direction. So I will prepare all of those 4 pieces here. So again, all the blocks are laid out the same direction, and all the stripes are laid out the same direction. And I can stitch them now, and I want to stitch all around. Now here I will do a little bit different this time than the previous stitching all around. So I will actually chain piece everything, so you can see how you can speed up on that process as well, especially when you start doing that first bit when you're sewing together 2 fence rail blocks. Okay, I've got them all sewn, and now I want to draw a line. Oh, there's one more. Now I want to draw a line on the back of that stripy fabric. So just use a pencil or a pen, it doesn't matter, we'll be cutting on that line, so you can use whatever drawing instrument you have around. And I'm drawing between the where the stitches are meeting, not where the square is, but where your stitch was, just in case something went wonky with my stitching and I didn't meet, the junction is not where the actual square meets here at the back. I know this is going to be in the middle. And now, like similar like in the last tutorial, I'm just going to cut a snip where those two lines meeting in the middle, and then I will take a scissors and cut it to the end. So I'm just putting that cross so all the lines are meeting there. Small snip. So for that you want to use some smaller scissors or your snipping tool. Now I can take my big scissors and I just want to, I'm cutting on the line, but I want to make sure that I cut to the very end of that line, so up to that stitch here, so I don't have any pucker there later. There we go. Now I will iron it out again. Again, when you're ironing in this point, depend on what type of fabric you work with. If it's a little bit flimsy, you can, you know, put a little bit of spray starch to keep it nice and rigid for you. So now I need to square them up again. Let's see what I can work out from that square. So I don't think I can do 5, though it looks like some of they could. I will go for 4. Can I go 4 3/4? I think I can. So I will square them up all to 4 3/4. Now you go with whatever you know you feel comfortable with. If you need to go smaller for 4.5, go for 4.5. Just eyeball to go in the middle, and that's it. You may like to use a tape to kind of make yourself a frame here where the 4.5 inch is, and then you can kind of hover around the block and make them more or less even for yourself. But this is all wonky, so don't worry about too much how they're going to look, you know, whether they're going to be very even or not. Okay, I finished squaring up my blocks, and I will show you why I have kind of placed them the way I have placed them. So this is where that small triangle was on all of those blocks, and when I'm going to set them up together now to stitch as a 4-patch, this is now a 4-patch, I want to chase my triangle. So this triangle goes this way, this triangle goes this way, this triangle goes down, and this triangle go on the outside. So each of those triangles go in different direction, and what it makes this nice secondary pattern here. As you can see, all of the stripes meeting in the middle, and that was the reason why I did it the way I did it. But if you place them other way or random way, you will still get nice result as well. So you may like to experiment with it. So now is a simple 4-patch to sew together. I'm not trying to meet any kind of corners here. You may like to think that this needs to come in here together in the same spot, but because we have not been very exactly precise with squaring up, they may have a little bit up and down. Don't worry about it. Once you know, quilt and wash your quilt when it's ready, this is all going to disappear. So I'm not kind of very precious about that. It will be good if they are as close as possible, but if they are not exactly perfect, I'm not going to worry about it. And this is what the block looks now. So we've got that secondary pattern here. The only seams here I wanted to nest were the one in the middle. All the other ones I just went with whatever the block was ironed before I got to that point. So don't worry about that. Looks very nice and flat. And now I have to just make a few more. It does look like a kind of flower-ish design. So I've got cut more of those blue ones because I really like that fabric, so I cut all of that piece I had into the 4-inch squares, but obviously it's not going to be enough to finish that pile, so I'm gonna have to use some other colors. So when I finish, I will be able to show you how it looks when you just use one stripy color on every block, and you know, you may have something in your stash, stripes, somewhat stripes, or maybe even other type of fabric, other kind of very obvious pattern which you didn't know how to use. It might be a good idea to use here. So I will do some blocks with the same, show you how it looks when they all the same stripes, and then how they look with mixed up with other ones as well, so you'll be able to see how it works. Again, those middle ones you don't have to use the same from the same batch. I did because that's how I kind of, it was in my head that at that design, but I could easily mix it up again with some other ones and it would look good too. I finished my blocks, but before I pop them on the design board, I would like just to recap some important details. So when you do your first cut and you are ready to add first stripy block on top, make sure your rails are set the same direction. Here I have set my beak of the, what I call it, to the bottom left. So then always put your stripes in the same direction as well on top of it. So every block, beak the same direction, every stripe the same direction on all of the blocks. After you've opened them up again, after the stripes have been added, important is to again set them the same way when you're stitching. Whichever you want, you know, to do that when you're creating that 4-part, just stick to the same direction. So I've set up my beaks again as a reference point, up, to the right, down, and then to the left. That way my center stripes meeting correctly in the middle to create that secondary design. I have done fewer on the last point. I kind of put them incorrectly and now they don't match, so that's how I know. But I will use them in my backing, so no problem. This is how the pattern look where I use the same stripy fabric, and here when I mix them up with, you know, different stripy colors in each block. Block is 9-inch unfinished or 8.5-inch finished, but obviously yours can be a little bit different depending how you started squaring them up. I need 42 foil layout 6x7 to make a lap quilt. I only have 25 of those blocks, so in the next tutorial I will show you my filler blocks to put it all together into a Linus quilt. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you try to make your own hidden fence rails. Don't forget to have a look at the description box below. I always add some links to the tutorials I've mentioned or the other things you might be interested in to have a look at. Thank you for joining, thank you for watching, and see you next time.